And the Lord so hard this morning, he thought my teeth was going to fall out. You know what? I got fixed then, okay? Y'all stay tuned. We got a good podcast today talking about the family unit and dysfunction and codependency. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the 4 Mics, 13 Teeth, 1 Ankle Monitor podcast. A podcast about addiction recovery made by addicts for anyone battling addiction.
Hey, welcome to today's podcast. 4 mics, 13 teeth, and 1 ankle monitor. And today we have on the podcast Miss Marie Call. She's one of the CR leaders here. Leader, baby. She's a leader. And she's here to give her testimony and talk about what is a normal family. You know, today we're talking about family dysfunction. And also as it relates to codependency. So she's just basically going to share her story with us today. So, Marie, what is a normal family?
That's a good question. I don't think there is a normal family, because if you if all were normal, then we'd all just be the same, and we are not normal. So it's just your perception of normal. That's
right. Like, you know, I think sometimes we have a perception, like we were talking about earlier, like from all these TV shows like Leave It to Beaver and things like that, of what a family is supposed to look like. And then when you obviously don't measure up, and you're like, I am not getting up, putting on that dress and wear high heels to cook breakfast. I'm just saying. But it doesn't talk about the things like families that look healthy. They look like they've got it together, but there are things going on underneath there. There's things being swept under the rug. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So give us kind of some backstory of your family life growing up.
Family life, I mean, it wasn't horrible. We weren't physically abused. We were not starved. We were not rich at all. I guess we were considered somewhere at the low, not super low poverty, but low class. Yeah. But I can think of the little neighborhood we grew up in. Everything seemed normal. Yeah. Except for there was things that was not normal. Yeah. And for one thing, no one ever said I love you in my household. Yeah. There was no hugs. So it was all just do the right thing or you're going to get a whipping or work.
Yeah. And I know just from doing other interviews with people, most of the time that causes kids to rebel.
It does. Being, I think, overbearing, and I have seen it in other girls. When you have an overbearing parent, they tend to, it's like caging a wild animal. Eventually, they're going to break, and they're going to break free, and they're going to go wild.
That's right. So basically, you would say, I know I've experienced this in my own life, it's more of an emotional void. And I think, honestly, looking back on my life, like I would have rather been physically abused than to have that emotional void of, just really getting to a point to where you break and then you just don't feel anything at all. You don't feel love. You don't feel hate. You just indifferent altogether.
Yeah, and that's what happened to me. I think at 11 years old, and I would, without going into too much because it involves somebody else's story. Right. But I will say, I had a mother that did not like women, and I think that made her a little more biased towards me than she was towards my brothers, as far as you're supposed to do this and you're supposed to do that. Yeah. But at 11 years old, I had a nervous breakdown. All I know, of course, at 11, you don't understand all this. Right. So my mother did take me to the doctor. He said I'd had an emotional breakdown, gave me some bottle about this big of medicine and said, take it for 3 days, throw it away, never take it again, or she will be addicted to it.
I bet I know what it is.
So we did that. And, of course, at 11 years old, And my mother wasn't well educated, and neither were my father. I mean, they could manage to do what they needed to do, but they were not really educated people. Then, life just went on as normal.
Yeah.
So,
so basically that sweep everything under the rug. We don't talk about these sorts of things. No affection and not telling a child that you love them really impacts them mentally, emotionally, and it also creates what we were talking about, a codependency. Because if you don't have that, then you're always looking for that.
Yes.
Just like we were talking about with my father leaving when I was 2. And, of course, I didn't see him until I was 22, 23, and kind of always felt like the third wheel and really not accepted. So, all of that rejection and stuff. So then you're out looking, trying to fill a void with different men because you lack this in your life, and you don't put that together at the time that you're doing it. You don't put it together.
No, and that was one of the things I also learned from my mother, unfortunately, was that even though her and my dad were married, she was not faithful to him. And it was pushed on me from that age, and maybe I had to do with the time period that's what girls did. Well, and not trying to brag or anything, but I had almost a photogenic memory. If I read it, if I wrote it, I could remember it. And I think it even intimidated my mother. And it wasn't like that I was maybe smarter than my brother. So she pushed not having a career, not having, not looking at stuff. I was supposed to get married and have babies and run a house. That's what I was supposed to do. But, of course, once I did have the breakdown, like you said, there's no emotions there. There's no love. There's no hate. There is nothing.
Yeah.
But I think because we are born with what God has given us to love and be loved, you're looking for it constantly.
Yeah.
So then you end up looking for it in the wrong places.
Yeah.
And that's through men. One's not going to satisfy you. You're going to find something wrong with him because you're not satisfied with yourself.
Yeah, you're trying to fill a void, that years of pain, years of emotional neglect. You're trying to fill that with something else. And in my case, I filled it with drugs and men and whatever. But, and that worked for me for a while, because if I didn't have to feel anything, then that was absolutely fine with me because at least I wasn't hurting.
Yeah, and, and like I said, when you're chasing the men, you get that high or what you need for a moment, and then it's gone.
Exactly.
It's not there. I mean, so you just keep searching for it again and again.
And so really, men can be an addiction. I mean, anything can be an addiction. We're not just here to talk about drugs. We're here to talk about many things. People come here to celebrate recovery, not for just drug addiction, for anger issues, for pride, for eating disorders, for all of these things, for family dysfunction. I guess there is no normal family. It's just what is your perception of what a normal family is. And so, but I was telling Marie earlier that, when I was in addiction and coming through recovery, I could lay blame, and rightfully so, on many people. But I had to lay that aside and work on myself. And once I started working on myself, I started to see that the things I blamed certain people for, like, not enough love and not enough caring, not enough, showing that you're important to them, really came to me that, hey, people can't give you what they don't have. So then it becomes basically a generational thing.
Yes.
So you can kind of sort of look in a family of what's going on, and you can most of the time trace that back generations. And so somebody's got to stand up and say, hey, I'm going to break this cycle, and I'm not going to do it through drug addiction. I'm not going to do it this way. I'm going to learn that I'm going to tell my kids I love them. I'm going to try to break that cycle as best I can.
And, like I said, with the nervous breakdown, but I did go to church, and the guy, when he told me, Jesus will save you, I believed him. And I did get saved at 12 years old. But I guess was still, and maybe it wasn't God's timing for that emotional block to be gone, I still just went on and did what I felt like I needed to do for me to survive.
Yeah.
And so I went on that way, but I did, once I had my children, I did tell them I love them. That was one thing that I learned from not hearing that. But I still did a lot of things wrong because, like you said, when emotions did come, it was bitterness.
Yeah.
It was resentment.
Yeah.
So I had to learn myself that it was me I needed to fix.
I remember being so bitter and just so hurt by things that had happened in my life that when I had my first daughter, I was literally terrified, just terrified that I was going to clam up. I was not going to be able to show her love. I would literally, with her being a baby, I would literally make myself pick her up and hold her and tell her how much I loved her. And I'm just being absolutely honest. Like, you can't give something away that you don't have, but I was trying, and I'm like, I don't know how to feel love, but I've had this precious baby, and I'm going to tell this baby every day that I love her. And the more I did it, and the more children I had, the easier it got. Now, I did some messed up stuff, but I always told my kids that I loved them.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I did messed up stuff because I hadn't fixed myself. I hadn't had the God fix me. So I still did messed up stuff, and probably even showed the older ones especially the wrong way to do stuff too.
Yeah. But, there's nothing like, fast forward years later, there's nothing like having your kids come back and say, hey, I understand. I understand your story. I understand where you came from. And then the healing can start because some of this stuff goes back generations where, maybe your mother's mother was that way and it just trickled on down the line, just like in any family, addiction. Usually you could trace it back to somebody that's in that family. Codependency, always got to have a man. You could trace that back. Alcoholism, you can trace that back. So really, it's what is your perception of a normal family, So there is dysfunction in every family. And so that is what Celebrate Recovery is here for. We're not just here for addiction. We're not just here for, we will walk with you and hold your hand through recovery, but we're also here to help you deal with issues, anger issues. I dealt with anger for a long time, and I know that you talked about control.
Oh, yes.
And things. And we know that control is really just fear-based. You're trying to control an outcome for fear that it won't go the way that you want it to go.
Yes, it's control is a big issue, and I think I'm still working on that. Even though I've given my life to the Lord, and of course I put my trust in Him, but being human, it takes over sometimes, and that's when I have to stop and think about what are you doing. You're supposed to be letting God take care of this, not you. So.
And releasing those wounds to Him and allowing Him to heal us, like that was the hardest part for me. And still to this day, He's working on me about not putting Him in a box and allowing Him to move. I mean, I'm praying about these things. I'm praying about restoration of family members, those relationships. And I think I have it in my head what that should look like. But none of that has turned out because His ways are not our ways and His thoughts are not our thoughts. And then when I get to thinking about it, boy, if I'd have put my hands in that, it wouldn't have turned out right.
And that's what you find, as you grow in the Lord, you find that. Because like I said, we are human, we're stubborn. Yeah. And especially if we have these codependency and control issues. And you find that you still stick your hand in there sometime, and then then you look back and say, I should not have done that, which goes into, I'm going to tell you another story about a family member of mine that was, she herself had an addiction, and I kept trying to fix it because I kept trying to control everything. Yeah. But when I decided, I'd say, God, when I finally said, I'm so sorry, I don't know why I'm doing this, 2 weeks later, that girl hasn't been on drugs since.
Yes.
And that's been years.
God can do abundantly and exceedingly above all that we can ask or think. But when Sheree tries to put her hands in it, it'll be a straight mess.
I understand. Yeah, mine too. And so control, but it's still control is real. I mean,
it is. It is. But you know what I have learned once I was able to just kind of say, okay, God, I've bombed this thing out. I've fallen on my face. I've made a fool of myself. I mean, publicly sometimes and otherwise. You know what? Let's do things your way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to try this your way.
Yep. And stop people pleasing, because that is another thing that can come from the dysfunctional family is the people pleasing. And it's hard to let go of that because you want to be liked. You want that love. And that's another way that we just, try to get it. But there's no one you need to please except God. So
that's right. And you need to, for so long I felt like I didn't have a voice. Or more so, like I didn't have a right to speak up, like my feelings were not valid, okay? But once I allowed God to work on me, then He began to give me that voice. And now I can stand up and say the things that I need to say and do them in the right way. And you know what? Like we talked about, if everybody loves you, and I mean, then you're compromising somewhere, because Jesus said, hey, if they hated me, they're going to hate you. So if everybody loves you and, toot your horn or whatever, there's some compromise somewhere.
Well, speaking of dysfunctional family, loving God can cause more dysfunction, because you're going to have family members that no longer talk to you either. Or
exactly.
want to hang out with you.
And, the Bible says that, some of your enemies will be in your own home. I mean, so I don't know, you guys. We're just here trying to talk about some topics that we know you guys are dealing with and we deal with. And Celebrate Recovery is truly more than a meeting. We are family. I met Marie here at Celebrate Recovery. And, although she's a leader, she comes on here and she's, hey, I'm still working on these things, Doesn't mean because we're behind this camera that we're not working on things. It's just we want to give you the motivation and the encouragement to work on these things, because there's nothing like having peace in your life. And if you're working on these things and you are on the road to recovery, you are on the road to healing. There is no perfect family. The devil is a lie. Okay, it is your perception. And so we just want to encourage you to come and be a part of what's going on here at First Baptist Church of Hogansville and Celebrate Recovery. At 3 o'clock on Sundays, we meet for food and fellowship, testimony time, small and large groups, and we also have a family support group. So you yourself might not be dealing with these things. You may have a family member that is dealing with it, and you need that safe place to come and to talk about these things. And we are that safe place. What says here
stays here.
Okay, so you don't have to worry about anything. This is a safe place to talk about issues. And so we are all a work in progress. None of us have arrived. So you want to say anything else, Marie?
I was just, real quick, I was going to say that when I came to Celebrate Recovery, it was because I was asked. And I came and thought, well, I don't have really a drug addiction. So, but I prayed and Lord said, yeah, go do it. And you know what? I have learned so much, and it has helped me, help God work on me, you know, so that I have just saw my hurts and habits, and now I can work on them with God in prayer.
And it gives you more compassion and more mercy towards other people, but because all of us are dealing with something. Just because one person is dealing with an addiction doesn't mean that maybe you don't deal with anger, or maybe you have walls put up because you're still dealing with trauma from childhood. Everybody is dealing with something, no matter if they smack on a beautiful smile or whatever. We all deal with things. And here at Celebrate Recovery, we get real about it. And we just want you to know that we're here for you, and we would love to have you. And we just pray everyone has a wonderful day today and a happy Thanksgiving. Yes. And so, Bill, you want to intervene on anything on here?
Yeah, Marie, talk about what you are or really kind of like leading or helping. But what's happening here Wednesday?
Oh, on Wednesday we are having a community Thanksgiving dinner. We are ladies and men of the church have came together and donated food. We're going to have a dinner with turkey, dressing, green beans, macaroni and cheese, and dessert. And we're going to make to-go plates that we're going to deliver to people that may be shut in or not have a way to get here. And we're also going to have the meal here where anyone that may not have someone to spend Thanksgiving dinner with can come and fellowship with us. And that will be from 5 to 7 on Wednesday.
That's amazing. So we love you guys. Celebrate Recovery, 3 p.m., Sunday evenings, food fellowship, small, large groups. Just come and be a part of what God is doing here. God is really moving here. And so we hope you all have a blessed day and a great Thanksgiving. Take care.